Welcome to another episode of Deep Dive Film School.
This week we're going to close out our Visionary Sci-Fi Festival with 2014's Ex Machina by Alex Garland.
Let's jump in. All right, everybody, I'm Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Pulcher.
And as we said, this week we are doing 2014's, that's right, Ex Machina.
Yep. Written, directed by Alex Garland. He's done Annihilation as pretty much his only other new movie, which came out last year.
Yeah.
Definitely on my top of my list last year. Fucking outstanding movie.
And it's really funny how different of a film it is, just in terms of not just style, but also sort of the way that he approaches showing this sort of uncanny valley of things that are human versus things that really aren't. Ex Machina is a very small scope of a film, and boy, Annihilation shows some things that I'm like, well, I've never seen that before.
It's true.
I've never seen that before.
He's truly original. Just so you know, I didn't know if you knew this, but he wrote 28 Days Later, Sunshine, the novel The Beach, and he's obviously, he wrote
Friends.
the Judge Dredd movie.
That's right,
the new one. Obviously friends with Danny Boyle. Knows Danny Boyle.
And this is
like,
his
what a perfect
first movie as a director.
It's an insane movie, and you have not seen this movie, right? So you're diving in.
I'm diving in.
Just brand new.
Yep.
Great. I have seen it probably 4 times now.
Oh wow! I can see. This movie has a very high rewatchability for sure.
Yes,
definitely.
No doubt. There's a lot going on here. I'm so glad you haven't seen it. I always love diving into things with you that you've never seen before. So your perspectives are fresh versus mine that may have kind of, seen certain things throughout.
Right. And the one thing I can say is right out of the gates, this first about 10 minutes or so is such a masterclass in sort of drawing the audience in to wonder what the hell it is we're here to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because really, we get this wordless montage very early on. Obviously, Domhnall Gleeson's character is this sort of millennial kid, works at this...
programmer.
Yeah, he's a programmer.
Blue Book.
He works at this company called Blue Book. We get all that without a single word being said to us, and then all of a sudden he's won this contest. He's in this helicopter and he's flying somewhere into Iceland.
Jump right in.
Yeah,
we see the real world. Not that this isn't the real world, but we see it at max a minute at all in this movie.
Yep.
And they dive right into it. He goes right to this secluded thing and has this great opening line where they're in the helicopter. He's like, when do we get to his property? He's like, we've been over his property for 2 hours, man.
Yeah,
and they're flying over ice caps and all this shit, like
beautiful forests, these vistas.
He lives in seclusion, super seclusion.
Well, and then even once we get to where his property or where his house / laboratory is, and the he being our character Nathan,
Oscar Isaac,
brilliantly by Oscar Isaac. Once he's there, the immediate tension that's happening and the immediate
right?
Yeah, it is.
He's instantly almost an asshole, right?
Yeah, and doing this weird deflective nice guy thing. Like, bro, you don't have to be like that, bro.
Doesn't shake his hand right away.
No.
Kind of has to establish some kind of dominance, and then he'll do it.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And all of those different elements, right down to when he's trying to get him to sign this non-disclosure agreement, makes us so hungry to figure out what the hell's going on. The mystery is so powerful.
And this is like a small movie.
It could be a play.
Yeah, it easily could be a play.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a great idea.
It could totally be a play.
But yeah, so this is a small movie, but very bold, I think, and you really have to buy into something like this, right?
Yeah.
But they make it easy. He makes it easy.
Well,
his direction is so deft and just perfect, and he lingers on things like, you think of Domhnall Gleeson's character going at Caleb, going into the house the first time, and there's this shot of him. Basically, he kind of interacts with, like, it takes his picture and gives him a card.
Yeah.
And then he has to go scan it, and he walks in, and, he's inside the rest of the movie. I guess they're not the rest of the movie, but, like, you kind of see this as, like, he lingers back outside for, like, an extra 5 to 10 seconds, kind of making sure you see that door close and him walking into something.
He's under Nathan's control for the rest of the movie. Exactly. I think is an easy way of saying it. That they do go outside, but he's never alone. Like, when he's alone, he's basically in a cell. He's in a windowless room that's underground.
God, now I want to see this as a play.
And and I think that, and it's worth saying that while you could say, you could strip this thing all the way down to a Dogville, Lars von Trier level of just tape on the floor of being, this is Nathan's room, this is Caleb's room, right? You could do all of that, and it would still have a very powerful effect. But what it is that the Garland does here, direction-wise, is so interesting because it has a coldness to it that's very reminiscent of someone like David Fincher, thinking of movies like whether you want to go with Zodiac or Panic Room or this very stark, very sterile kind of atmosphere. Sure. But then at the same time, there's these gorgeous, like, rocks built into this underground laboratory, and, like, these really interesting trees.
This guy has a shit ton of money. He basically runs, they said at one point, 95% of the search volume on the internet.
Right, so it'd basically be like
Google. Yeah,
it's a Google mixed with a Facebook mixed with a Microsoft is basically what Nathan has done, what he's created.
And he's, like, so secluded at this point. He's a tortured genius, right? Like, that's kind of his thing. He's aggressive right off the bat, like we talked about.
And also, and it's interesting, too, because he's both, like, the loosey-goosey kind of egomaniacal, like, but at the same time, like, wearing, like, flip-flops and his basketball shorts and his big like Bed-Stuy hipster beard,
He based this character off of two people, Bobby Fischer.
Oh wow, yeah.
And Stanley Kubrick.
Oh wow.
Isn't that funny?
That's perfect. That is perfect. But then the interesting thing that's different than either one of those is he's also a physically ominous presence from the very beginning. Oscar Isaac, considering that most people, once they've seen Ex Machina, probably the only other thing that they can really point to of his from before this would be inside Llewyn Davis.
Yeah.
And he's such a ton.
Maybe Star Wars, but maybe that's how they met, because they did Star Wars together.
Actually. Oh, that could be. But he's wiry in Llewyn. What? I can never say
Inside Llewyn Davis?
Llewyn Davis.
Yeah,
okay.
the Coen Brothers movie.
But he's wiry in that. And here he's big.
He's ripped, yeah.
So he was
prepping for Star Wars, is what he was doing.
Right. But he's an ominous presence, I think, in that way, where Domhnall Gleeson, also in Star Wars, which one thing I realized is if you get, much like with a lot of British actors, if you give them the direction to speak with an American accent, they suddenly seem way geekier and way less smart.
True. He nails the accent, though.
He does. He completely does. But he, again, like when you see him playing or acting with his natural British accent, he seems much more imposing. He seems much more refined. And with an American accent, you're like, oh, you poor little buddy. Like, how small is your apartment? You know what I mean? Like, he just does seem like maybe barely 21. Like, he seems like the most, like, just frail little millennial,
sure. So, out of these movies that we've done with Her, Okja, Arrival, and this one, all of these movies in this festival are so atmospheric, right?
In completely different ways, too.
Totally different ways.
Yes.
But that's obviously something, us personally, what we're looking for in a good sci-fi movie. And we keep talking about, it's more about the human experience, right? It's not that we're in space with aliens. Yes, there's a version of sci-fi that is that, but to me, visionary sci-fi steps beyond that and takes you to another world.
Well, and we have to be able to associate with a human element, and that's what makes, I think, the juxtaposition of, whether you're focusing in on an alien intelligence and AI, or you know, or something having to do with time travel. Anytime that you're starting to kind of piece apart that, it's important to have the human experience mirror
for sure
to put it up against, because otherwise you don't. Otherwise, all you're seeing is basically, in my opinion anyway, fantasy.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantasy, but I think it's also a lot about technology these days. Sci-fi has kind of evolved into that, right? Because even in Arrival, there's some technology based around it. But her, Okja, all this stuff is based around some kind of new futuristic technology, not necessarily, oh, the aliens are coming to get us.
Well, and I think it's funny, too, because you kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, if you think that what is the silent movie, you know, Fritz Lang version of Ex Machina? Well, it's Metropolis, right?
Sure.
But what was scary about Metropolis when it came out was this concept of, like, again, it's very Frankenstein-esque. It's like, oh, you know, humanity's gone too far. And so by its very merit, that is a frightening kind of uncanny valley aspect. With Ex Machina, the frightening part is that you go, all of this makes sense. And there's a moment, and we get, it's much later on, I realize I'm skipping around, but when Nathan's character is describing how he created his artificial intelligence to be able to think, the way he describes that using the analogy of search engine histories.
Yeah, the writing here is amazing.
That particular scene scared me more than anything else in this movie, because it was so plausible.
Well, I say this all the time, but to me, my favorite type of sci-fi is something like, you know, like a Children of Men, I would say is a sci-fi movie, one of my favorite movies ever. And it's, you know, that movie may take it to the extreme a little more, but it's that logical leap forward, right?
Exactly.
That just a little bit like, 10, 15, 20 years, we wrote a script based very much around stuff like that.
Yeah.
Called Dreambox. And it's, you know, I think it's just fascinating to step into that world. And, you know, a lot of times we look at movies, especially sci-fi, to predict the future, right? Like Back to the Future 2, I mean, we should have flying skateboards by now.
I just want the tiny pizza that you put into the pizza oven and boop, and then it's full size.
level 4, please.
There you go. That's all I want.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
It does.
I mean, a hoverboard seems cool too.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
But, you know, I mean, the future in that movie is past. You know, it's not the Jetsons' future. Right, it's you know, and maybe in 300 years it will be or something, but
well, and I think what this movie presupposes also is that this is right now, right? There's nothing really happening in this movie outside of Ava and all of her cohorts, and the fact that she's being hidden, that there is this non-disclosure agreement that Caleb has to sign, like all these secretive elements make you go, oh, this could be right now, actually. It is plausible enough in that sense. Let's get to Ava. Let's get to what this discovery is, this invention that Nathan has created.
The whole idea behind his, you know, winning the contest, if you could call it that, and we can get to that, but his whole idea of winning the contest is that he gets to come out to Nathan's ranch or whatever you want to call it, and hang out with him for a
compound.
week.
Let's be fair, it's a compound.
And hang out with him for a week. And you don't really know what that's going to be. He has to sign the NDA. And we find out that he really wants to run a Turing test?
Turing. Alan Turing.
Alan Turing test. And you want to explain what that is?
Well, so Alan Turing created a test to see if artificial intelligence could fool a human being. They actually made a movie of it not that long ago called The Imitation Game.
Yeah.
But really this idea that through not being able, you know, and Caleb makes the point later that he was able to see Ava and know from the get-go that she is not human, which I think we'll talk a little bit more about the possible duplicitous reasons that Nathan may have had for doing that. But, you know, in the original Turing test, the subject cannot see.
Interacts with a computer.
The human interacts with a computer, and if the human is fooled, right, into thinking that they're talking to another person, then at that point, the artificial intelligence has gained enough sentience that I don't know that they think like, oh, it is conscious, but that was sort of what the thought experiment was headed towards, was that idea.
So, you get these, basically we go through sessions in the movie, and that's kind of how the movie's pieced out, is these different sessions with Ava.
Session 1, Session 2,
Ava Session 1. The first one, we kind of it's more like getting to know you stuff. It's, we get to see his work lab a little bit in that Post-it note wall, which is awesome. It looks awesome.
Yeah,
it looks like the Jackson Pollock painting he references later. It's
it's chaos.
Kind of interesting. Yeah. It's total chaos, but he's obviously this mad genius, right? And he's very full of himself at the same time. But we get this interaction, and it's really she's beautiful. He's fascinated. But we kind of see her body, and she has this clear body with all this almost mesh on her like upper body and legs and stuff, and it looks like it's
class. 3D printed, right? Basically. It's like that mesh that holds together 3D printed sculptures. And she is.
It's just kind of she's breaking the ice, is what he says in the clip, right?
To see Ava, there's something really unsettling about it, while at the same time there is this sort of sensual kind of comeliness to her, but meant to also at the same time seem very surreal and seem very strange and off-putting. But it's sort of doing both things simultaneously, which again, just to the art direction here, is such a brilliant feat to somehow manage to continually give that impression. Like we can't. And obviously, it goes back to this larger theme here, which is this is a movie about men, and this is a movie about sexuality, and this is a movie about gender,
for sure.
Right? And so,
it's definitely about those.
In its own way, Garland gives us an opportunity to not be able to stop staring at Ava and wonder why we are, because at once she's both horrifying and kind of alluring, and it's really it's impressive kind of what it does, and what it does to you to realize what it is that you're sort of staring at and objectifying, right? Because she's in so many ways either aware or unaware of that, and the motivation for whether she's aware or unaware of that becomes sort of the crux of the entire movie, right?
We get this great conversation between them, where I think it shows a lot about Nathan's character, and it's Caleb comes out and he's very excited about their first encounter, and they are kind of flirtatious a little bit, and Nathan twists one of the things he says, and he says something Caleb says something along is like, that's godlike, that's like people of the gods kind of thing, and then later Nathan turns that on him.
It's like when you told me I was God.
He's like, what you said, like, I'm not a man, I'm a god. And Nathan does this annoying thing through the whole movie where he doesn't really answer his questions if he doesn't want to. And just kind of trails off into something else. And he's like, no, that's not what I said. And he's just like,
anyway, Mr. Quotable here.
Exactly. Yeah, keeps talking about that. And, he's so full of himself. I think it says a lot about his character and everything. So
definitely. Well, and I think that it's very quickly we get the feeling that something is not right. We've had this sort of early sense of push and pull in terms of like how much is he going to be controlled while he's here, but we get this power outage. That sort of locks all the doors, and he isn't able to get out of his room. He's trapped in his room, and then invariably we're waiting for it after that. I mean, this is the classic Chekhov's gun, right? Sure. Like now the power outage has to happen while he's in the session with Ava, right? Which of course it does. And the second that it does, and we realize that it means that the cameras are off, Ava tells Caleb, don't trust Nathan. And the second that happened,
that's in the second session.
I knew the power outage was going to happen. I didn't necessarily know that that's what she was going to say. And from the second that happened, I was like, oh, that's good. That's real good. Right? And then she doesn't have an opportunity to tell him why he shouldn't trust him. Boy, from that moment and forward, the web that gets sort of weaved in this concept of who's telling the truth. If someone is lying, why would they be lying? and trying to unstitch what all of that mystery might mean really becomes one of the main themes of this movie, which I find so fascinating.
I mean, yeah, so he basically wants you to see her as a machine.
Yes.
And then see kind of if you still feel like she has some kind of subconsciousness, right?
Yes.
Which is fascinating to me. He does this tricky thing where after their first meeting, he puts the only channels on TV are just of Ava's room, so he gets to watch her the whole time.
Yep.
And that's the only thing to entertain himself that he has, so of course he's going to, he's planting all these seeds, right?
Well, and isn't the one glaring, not oversight, but I guess the one glaringly obvious thing to me of, oh, this can't turn out good, and this has to be for dark and depraved purposes and all the rest of what kind of unravels, is why would you bring in a coder if you didn't want to, for lack of a better way of saying it, like pop open her hood and be like, here's how she works, which he refuses to do. He doesn't want to do that. Why the hell else would you bring in a guy like Caleb?
I think
there's no reason to.
I think he is smart. I think he is intellectual. They both have some very intellectual conversations about just life and how technology has changed life and what it means to be a woman versus a man.
Yeah.
All sorts of things. And I think, he's definitely not as smart as Nathan projects to be, but I think he has some good points, There's a certain point in the movie where this is, what I thought every time I watched this is like at a point you're just like, and he asks this question, I'm so glad he does in the movie, to Nathan is, why is she a girl? Why did you make her a gender? Why couldn't she be a gray box?
Yep, exactly.
And that's a huge part of the movie, if you ask me, definitely. Because, we start getting the history of not only Caleb and that, he's lost his parents. We get his backstory through meeting Ava, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of stuff, and the getting to know you stuff, and it was just kind of fascinating how they treated kind of the reveal of things in this movie.
Definitely. I guess I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, he makes as much sense of being asked to go and do these Ava sessions as Jeff Goldblum did of being like a chaos theory expert and going to Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really make sense. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense in that way.
I think he kind of explains it to him that it was his data that pulled him from his employees, and he could kind of frame it as a contest.
Sure. It's just when we get to the reveal,
he just needed a test subject.
When we get to the reveal of why it's actually Caleb, it makes a lot more sense.
No doubt.
That's all. Is that just you're great at, you're a great programmer, and it's like, yeah, but you don't really want. You want someone to go in there and interact with her as like a person. So.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. He could be a chef somewhere.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter. Something visually interesting that I noticed is that, he's the free one in the movie and she's the one who's imprisoned.
Who's captive, yes.
But when they're talking to each other, he's in a little cage. And she's able to roam around and go change.
They're in her like apartment.
But I thought the fact that they kind of he reversed that was very smart.
That is very interesting. That is very, very interesting.
It's just those tonal things that he can do, and he does this so much in Annihilation. But just being able to balance that stuff, it's just a brilliant. I think if there was more people in this movie, it wouldn't be as good.
No, I completely
agree. If he had an assistant or something, I guess he does have an assistant.
Well, and you're bringing me to my next point, which is that our fourth character here is a woman. I don't know that I wrote down her character's
Kumiko,
name.
I think, is what it is.
And she...
Kayoko,
that's right. And there's what is supposed to be a surprising and shocking reveal that she is also an android. I just assumed that she was. I know he didn't say that she was explicitly, but I just assumed that she was. So when it's like, the reveal itself of her peeling back this fake skin to show like her skull and all that, her, Terminator skull, these chrome skulls with these big bug eyes, is effective and interesting, but it isn't the like, no. But it's played a little bit like it's supposed to be that, and I'm like, oh, was I supposed to think she was human before that? Because
I don't think so.
I don't think so, but it felt in that moment like it was.
Gosh, I never felt that.
Okay, maybe it wasn't, but that was the impression that I got that they were trying to do, is like that this was somehow some kind of a twist. But it does raise, at that point, the one thing that it did raise for me that I thought was a very troubling thought is, if Kyoko is an android and basically one of these models, just like Ava is, then obviously he decided to stop the AI at some point and then leave that one to be a servant, and then continue to experiment with another person to make them smart enough so they wouldn't want to be a servant, and that's the one that's locked in a room, which is kind of screwed up, right?
Sure.
So that's A. And then B is, why didn't he make her completely human looking? He has the capability of doing it, right? He has more...
You mean Ava?
Yeah, he has more fake skin than just this.
Yeah, I assume it was to really show that she's a machine to Caleb before he does that. And I think it's probably an option at some point. Ava doesn't even know that's an option, though, outside of her face, right?
Until much later.
You know, and we get this walk down the hallway, too, where you see some of the past faces of other AIs.
Yeah. It's such a strange image. Yeah. But it does, again, add to an even deeper level of, like, how much, fuckery does Nathan actually have going on here? Psychologically towards games. Caleb. But I think that's a great reveal of that, is to be like, oh, look at all these other AI. They call them the worst thing in the world in the movie. Do you remember? It's like it's something terrible, like Gynobot. It's something awful. It's like it feels like it's like
it feels like it's demeaning.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, it's not Fembot, but it just feels like very clinically like, oh, this one's female. It just feels very barbaric in a way, I guess. I can't remember the exact term. Maybe it's not. Anyway.
Anyways, you definitely get some Frankenstein vibes in this movie a little bit too, right?
Oh, for sure.
Just like, this is his creation and he's testing this. But is he testing Caleb or is he testing her? That's the big question through a lot of this movie. And Caleb starts to become wise, especially because the power keeps going out, and they're having these side conversations that, otherwise he's watching everything, right? He has a camera everywhere.
Right.
And we find out that she's causing these power outages, and that makes tons of sense. You're like, oh yeah, of course. But it's just another fun, good twist in the writing here. They have this conversation about what she would do if she could go outside. What's the first thing she would do? And she picks a busy traffic, just a high
intersection
with cars and people walking in crosswalks and stuff like that, and
it's people watching.
Yeah, and she basically wants to people watch, and I thought that was such a cool thing. And she kind of tells a joke back to him, and she's starting to learn him a bit more. And what are her motivations through this whole thing? Then they get to another session where she starts. She wants to kind of show off her sexiness a little, and she puts on hair and looks more like a real person, right?
These long gloves, these long stockings,
leggings, cute dress, and it's like a cardigan or something. But it's Alicia Vikander. She's beautiful, and he's obviously playing up the flirtatious stuff and like asking him questions, and the whole time you're just like, how much is Nathan doing, and how much is just circumstance?
Right.
And he keeps fighting that. And when he talks about the search engines, about how it's not what, all of his competitors went into shopping and online, retail.
Yeah.
Where he went into, they want to see what people want to buy. And he says, search engines are about how people are. What is it?
Here's the quote. Yeah. Okay. First of all, I love that he refers to her brain not as hardware but wetware.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting. But then says, that's the weird thing about search engines. It's like striking oil in a world that hadn't invented internal combustion yet. Too much raw material. Nobody knew what to do with it. and that search engines aren't about what people were thinking about, but rather how people were thinking.
Yeah.
Right? The leaps that they were taking, the ways in which they were improvising. That by its own, that just being mapped out could be an entire neural network of the way in which a person could think, and that's what Ava's brain is it's Blue Book. It is essentially Google.
Yeah.
That sent chills down my spine. That concept really freaked me out because it does make a lot of sense.
If I've learned anything from this festival and these movies is that AI is going to happen.
Oh yeah.
And it's a little frightening. Yeah.
Hopefully we'll be long dead by the time it takes over everything, though.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, kids.
I think the other interesting thing here is that a lot of these discussions are taking place while they're out in this beautiful landscape, and sort of this farmland that's, again, Iceland.
It's more mountain land.
Well, but I mean, there are like just big, beautiful trees.
It's like shot it in Norway.
When they're out there, it's like they're camping.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of conversations about that make you feel like, is this God sitting and having conversations with Adam before, while they were trying to build Eve, right? Of sort of this, here they are in their own, personal Garden of Eden, just these two men talking about creation, which technically, to paraphrase from Sarah Connors in Terminator 2, is one thing that a man can't do. He can destroy, but only a woman can actually create, right?
Good pull.
I love all that kind of influence that's happening here, though. I think it's really interesting stuff.
Absolutely. I think a pretty pivotal point in the movie is where Caleb is Domhnall Gleeson's character, starting to go a little crazy and starts questioning really if he's real, right?
I love that they touch on this because it's the Blade Runner problem, right?
Sure.
It's the Blade Runner problem where if you don't address it, it now becomes the elephant in the room that is all that's going to be discussed after the movie's over. Well, really? Caleb was a robot the whole time.
Or wasn't he?
And then we don't know. Yeah. Instead, it's like, just have Domhnall Gleeson just do a pretty intense. Oh my God, that is an intense scene.
Yeah, it is.
Like I felt it. I was like,
oh yeah.
Oh God, and he's digging, Whew. And it's pretty rough stuff, definitely.
Absolutely.
But I'm glad that he addressed it because if he hadn't, it would be the main thing you'd think about.
Absolutely, for sure. I agree with you. Most sci-fi movies wouldn't do that, right?
No, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
They'd be like, if people want to throw that hat in the ring, let them. And instead it's like, no, we need to know that he's human. That's a very important part of this story.
So he starts questioning Nathan a lot and calling him out on his bullshit. And Nathan's still kind of half answering. And they keep playing this game, right? And he kind of finds out that he was the test. He was more the test than Ava was the test.
I think the spookiest part about
the fact that he's a nice kid, no family.
Was her face built off of facial recognition from my internet pornography history?
Yeah,
that's the spookiest part.
And he's like, "Oh, what else is if you're not going to use it for anything?"
Yeah, he's like, "Well, shit, man, come on. Like, what did you want me to do?" And it's like that's the part that made you realize how deep the machinations that Nathan went to.
Nathan's a mad genius, right?
Yeah.
Like
he is Dr. Frankenstein.
On Frankenstein or Joker levels, right?
Yeah.
Like you just don't. He doesn't care anymore. He's beyond power.
Yeah.
At this point, and he's doing this for his own entertainment almost at this time. And we start finding out more about his history and that there's other bodies of these AIs throughout, and every single one of them are women.
Yep.
Every single one the whole time.
Again.
Probably because he was building fuck dolls.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we see the level of respect that he has for them, which is next to nothing.
And he's obviously a genius, right? I think he proves that, but it's also like you're a chauvinist. There's all sorts of things that are going on here that he's trying to figure out. And
it has to make you wonder.
Who's he building these for?
Well, and it has to make you wonder, like, exactly who's he building these for? Because if this is a guy who's a mad genius, but such a horrible piece of work that no woman wants to be around him, then he's building himself girlfriends, right?
He's basically building him an army of women and can change their bodies to whatever.
Well, and you see these really some of the only actually disturbing stuff in the movie. The movie is fantastic at being very covert in its horror.
Yeah, that's
but
a great way to put it. Yeah.
This footage that he sees back of the early experiments that Nathan has done is very overt, and we see a robotic woman scratching at a door until her arms fall apart.
Yeah, so
it's so effective. It's so terrifying.
It absolutely is. It's, so they've all gotten smart enough to know that they should not be trapped in here.
Yeah.
And they want to leave.
Yeah, they have enough sentience to know that.
And that keeps happening, and that's where Ava's going too.
Yes.
We're seeing her at that point, and her.
Yet she's still very docile. Yeah. And so we wonder, at that point, it's so funny, because I've been thinking about this movie for days after I watched it, but
I knew you would.
It's like thinking about we are Caleb, right? We watching this movie the first time through, before you get all the way through and know what's going to happen. We are Caleb, and it doesn't matter what level. Let me just say this: it doesn't matter what level of sentience Ava may or may not have. She's human enough in the way that she talks and the way that she looks, that we as humans cannot help but anthropomorphize her, which in its own way is the biggest danger of AI. That the second that we think something is human enough, we attach those feelings onto it. I do it to my dogs all the time, right?
Yeah.
And at some point I have to stop and be like, they're dogs. Like, they are actually dogs. Like, they've been domesticated, but they're dogs. I can do a cute voice for them, but they're still dogs, right? That anthropomorphizing is where we attach our own needs and wants and feelings and emotions and complexity onto things that aren't necessarily human in that way. And Caleb does it to his own defeat in this movie, and we do it to our own assumption that she has the best interest in mind for Caleb too. Right?
Fascinating.
Which is what makes the turn in this movie so interesting, because it's as cold and clinical as the artificial intelligence that she actually is, which is my survival, screw everything else.
Absolutely, which is outstanding.
It's so fascinating.
But we get this reveal first of basically Nathan calling out Caleb on all this stuff that he's trying to do, and trying to get him drunk and all this stuff, which Nathan, if we haven't mentioned, is a fucking alcoholic.
Raging alcoholic.
Through this whole movie. And
how was the party? Oh, there wasn't a party.
Yeah.
It's like,
and so we get that reveal, and you're thinking this is the end of the movie, and he's like, he caught him, like, what's gonna happen now? I don't know. And then all of a sudden, Caleb's like, oh, all that shit? Yeah, I did that last night.
I did all that last night.
And you're like, oh, wait, what? Yeah. It was just like the second twist on top of it.
And it's the first time in Nathan's eyes that we see, and he doesn't feel like, oh, I've been bested. Instead, it's like, no, you can't do that. Like, you don't know what these things are actually capable of. And what we end up seeing, it's actually an amazing piece of acting by Oscar Isaac of being stabbed.
This fight in the hallway.
And being killed. And it's like slowly, disbelief that he has of like, oh, this isn't good.
I've finally done it. I've killed them enough to kill me. That's where it's going. Wonderful
it's a brilliant
movie.
moment. It's a brilliant moment. And it is, like I said, I think that, again, though, when we see her leave Caleb locked in there is this moment where I was like, oh, she
was playing on them the whole time. Yeah.
And she's something different. She does have sentience, but there's no reason to believe that having consciousness means that then you're a thinking, caring human being. It just means that you now have a sense of self-preservation.
Yep.
Which still might not mean anything to what the bugs that they think humans are could be, right?
I love that she just gets her chance at the end, right?
And takes it.
And they kind of bookend the real world in this movie with the first 30 seconds being him winning the thing.
It's an amazing upside down shot too of the shadows.
And then her being on a corner with traffic. So
fantastic.
Great idea.
Fantastic.
Great movie. Brilliantly done. This fest was awesome. I think it's a great introduction to not only us, but to us being able to talk about directors that we love and directors that we really want to take hold in this world in this Hollywood world where there's nothing original. Finding things like this is amazing.
Oh, it totally is. It totally is. And I think that those ones that stick with you. I've been thinking about this movie for days and days.
Next episode, we're going to kind of do a summation of the festival and kind of just talk about lessons that we learned from this festival and just sci-fi in general, and ask a few questions. So,
talk a little bit more about science fiction.
Absolutely. Make sure you like and subscribe, comment below if you're on YouTube, and thank you very much for watching, guys.
Thanks. We'll see you guys next week.
This week we're going to end out our visual. All right, let's try that again. Sorry.
Welcome to another episode. Do.